Howdy.
Howdy.
Since we've all kind of met, I'm Stacy Ryder. This is my wife, Martha. And Cindy asked me to come give a little talk. And not real sure what exactly to talk about. So I went back and I just looked at the name of your group, Growth. And she told me a bit of the history about relationships and things like that, and a little bit about myself. Ron and I have been married, let's see,
You better get it right.
yeah.
Oh.
All right, so we've been married 31 years,
Oh, wow. Got it.
6 days,
How many minutes?
and wait a minute, I'm getting there. Hang on, let me do the minute math here. 4 hours and 39 minutes. 38,
Oh,
something like that.
Yeah, but we don't know if that's right or not.
that is right. It's pretty accurate. That is right.
We're
I
pretty
get,
close. Trying.
Pretty close.
That's awesome.
Well, the trick is getting married on December 31st.
that.
Then all you do is add a day to whatever it is, so, you know.
Good job.
But, you know, we both come from broken homes. Fortunately, our parents at least were amenable with each other. I mean, my parents became friends again, and it's really cool to have had, you know, my mother come back to the house that she built with my daddy and be able to stay there for the holidays with him and his then wife. And so that was a blessing, because before that it wasn't real pleasant being in the middle of all that deal. But I had the best place of all the kids, because as a 15-year-old boy, I sat there and arbitrated between my parents when they, you know, talking about stuff. So one thing I knew is the problems that they had were not our problems. It wasn't our fault, you know, and they had their own issues. And so, let me get a little more comfortable on up here. So anyway, when Ron and I met, we're both out there in the world, and this was what some people call BC, before Christ, but we were heading that direction, kind of unbeknownst to ourselves. I mean, I've got a little bit of church history behind me, and she does too. And so God's always at work. There's just a freebie right there. He's always at work. I kind of talked about that today on one of my drive videos on Facebook, because God never sleeps. And when we met, the night that we met, I wasn't looking for anybody to marry, and there she was. And when I was walking out in the parking lot to greet her gone, because she was heading to the lighthouse to go meet up with Scooter, that's what I always call her. And it was like a voice behind me said, I could marry this girl. And I want to turn around and see who said that. I wouldn't, you know. And 2 weeks later, she told her best friend she was going to marry me. She didn't tell me that, but, you know.
How'd you know?
So, yeah. And so anyhow, coming from broken homes, what we did as young people, and during all this time, side story, Phil Robertson, Kurt met Connie Sue Poland, and she brought him up to meet Phil Robertson. Y'all know who he is, a duck commander, okay? Brought him up to his house, and
You
Kurt,
met him?
Yeah, Kurt got married at his house. We've known them for over 30 years now.
Ooh, take me up there.
So anyway,
Y'all got married at his house?
No, Kurt did.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. We learned to evangelize from Phil, and just so you know, Phil and his family, what you see is what you get.
And that was when they were right across the river in Columbia to the right back up.
He still lives in the same house.
Same place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to see
I've
what
been
it
there.
used to look like, go on my Facebook page and you'll see pictures
I've
of
been
Kurt
there.
Wedding.
I've met him.
Okay.
But it was about probably 30 years ago when I met him.
Yeah. Yeah, the couches on the floor, sheets over them. Oh yeah,
They
that's
were
it.
building that duck call in a little old portable building right there.
Yeah, it's still back there. The machine is all rotted down, but anyway.
Okay, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's okay. That's okay. It's neat because people who are curious about them, it's neat to know that kind of stuff. But so our journey in Christ started before our marriage, but after we met, and it's always been a bit together, though not exactly the same. So that's kind of part of why you guys are here, I think, too. But lost my train of thought. My apologies. So we made a commitment to one another that if we were going to get married, now notice I said if we got married, because at that point we knew we wanted to, but we were real hesitant to, let's be friends. Let's be friends, because we saw what happened to our parents. And we determined that our children would never experience what we did. And so far, it's held true. And so some of the things that I'm going to talk about tonight, really all of it, is deep-rooted in this kind of stuff. And that'll make more sense as we just get started with it. And so, y'all know what a paradigm is?
Yeah.
What a paradigm is? It's a way of thinking. It's how we think about what we think about. And it's our view, it's our perspective on life. You know, the song, Rose-Colored Glasses. Well, that's a paradigm, to look at things in this certain way. And years ago, I was given this book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And if you've never read it, I certainly recommend it to anybody. And they actually have it for teens too. But without going deep into that book, there is an exercise that the author puts in there. And I want to do my best to do it, but you guys are going to have to not cheat, all right? Because I want to talk about a paradigm, our paradigms, and how to have a paradigm shift. Because in a relationship, we come into a relationship. Now, understand this too. Everything that we talk about tonight is not just exclusive and specific to a marriage relationship. Because when we have a job, we're constantly having to sell ourselves to our employer so we keep the job. So in a relationship, whether it's a friendship or it's in a marriage, it's a constant sales job. It really is. And it's a buying job as well. So what I want to do is I have some pictures here. All right? Now, I'm going to stand here. You look that way. You look that way. All right. I'm going to show y'all this picture. Okay? Look at it real good.
I'm not to look, right?
You can't look at this. Linda, you're gonna look at this, okay? You see it?
Mhm.
You're real good. Okay?
Okay.
Good? All right. All right. Your turn.
Look that way.
That's right. Okay? See, I'll look at this picture. Okay?
I can't have
You? Okay. All right. Now, you've just developed a paradigm, a perspective, a picture in your mind of something, a subject. Now, what I would like for this half to describe, what do you see? Can you see it well enough?
When I saw it, I saw a face.
Okay, what do you see?
I saw a face with I saw a face.
Okay.
It looked like an old lady looking down.
That's the same picture you just said, you colored it in?
It's a little more detailed.
Okay.
But describe it. What do you see?
Well, I see an old woman.
An old woman.
I saw an old woman too.
I've seen it before.
You've seen it before. You don't get to
I've
participate.
seen the girl with her hair.
But I thought it was sheep. I saw a sheep earlier.
What do y'all see?
I see a pretty woman and she's got her head turned sideways. She's
Looking over.
I'm looking over.
Is that what you see?
But when I look at it the second time, I see the old woman with the nose.
I don't.
So I see it both ways. I see it both ways.
Okay. Here.
gosh,
Let me-
now
But at first, it's
Here's what you got.
looking over her shoulder.
All right. So the ones who saw the young lady, their paradigm was conditioned by this image.
Something about it.
Oh, wow.
Makes it clear to see, right?
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Those who saw the old lady, their paradigm was conditioned with this picture.
Correct, that's what I saw, the old lady.
Yeah.
Because we saw the young lady.
I saw an
How do
old
we get
lady.
in disagreements with others? We're looking at the same thing, but we're not seeing the same thing.
Correct.
Right.
It's our paradigm. It's how we look at the world. It's our perspective.
I guess I look at and think if people are old. I saw old.
Our perspectives are based on our experiences, our upbringing, and our education, and even our sex. Men think logically,
And
women think emotionally.
Correct.
Okay? We're built that way. God created man and woman in a specific manner so that they would complement one another so that the two could become one flesh.
Correct.
You know, this book, Love and Respect, one I recommend everyone get. Now, we've known about this book for years because we know a very special lady who always talks about the books that she reads, and she always talks about this one big time. And it's based on Ephesians 5:33. Now, we're not going to go deep into that, but I recommend go read Ephesians 5:33. Men, love your wives. Wives, respect your husband. It's not conditional. It's unconditional. We talk about unconditional love. We're supposed to give the men give unconditional love to the women. Women, unconditional love to the men.
Respect.
Respect, I'm sorry, yes. So anyway, good book to read. We are in the process of reading that.
Who
She
has
has
read
one.
it?
I
Have
have
any of
one.
y'all read that book?
I haven't.
I
You
have
not?
No, I have it. Yes, I've read it.
Okay.
Not both of them, actually.
Nobody else in it besides Cindy? Read it? Y'all in the process of reading it?
We're reading it now, yeah.
Y'all need to get that book.
It's good.
That's great. That's
Now-
really good.
To further my introduction of myself, I have a philosophy I call Own Your Mind Business. And in Own Your Mind Business, there are some things that I talk about. What they call the crazy cycle, we call ricochet. So I'm going to give you a little freebie and then we'll get back into the talk. But because this really does tie into our paradigms and the fact that we see things differently, we need to learn how and what the other person sees. How they're looking at it, what they're seeing. So ricochet is very early in our marriage when we saw that things were starting to turn into the crazy cycle where this happens and then this happens and this happens and it's like pinging on, ping, 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 and nothing's related to the other. And we're like pinballs, pinging off of each other. And then it just ramps up. And finally one day I just said, hold it, time out, wait a minute. We're going to have us a word. And when we see this happening between us, so we're coming to agreement, okay, we might not see eye to eye just right now on things, but we have something that can bring us together. Ricochet. When we recognize that we're pinging off of everything, somebody calls ricochet. And that was almost 30 years ago. It was over 20 years ago that I came up with that. But I can tell you, in all the time since, if we've ever done it more than once, it was twice. Ever. Because once you understand the principle, you're able to get control of yourself now without anybody else. That's called self-discipline. We needed ricochet to help us be disciplined by an outside idea. And then once we learn this and we recognize things like this, we can see it happening, we can basically say it in our head and we're good. And so it not that we don't have disagreements. They happen, we're human. But we don't go crazy anymore like that happens. So that ties into the crazy cycle big time. He goes in a lot more detail than what I just did. So that leads to the next thing, trust and baggage. Now I brought up my mom and dad because being in the unique position that I was in, being able to watch the decline of their marriage right in front of my eyes and actually being involved with it as an arbiter between them, I began to really observe my parents, to think about the differences that they have. My dad's from Buckeye, Louisiana, rodeo, hand, cowboy. A lot of stuff you learn over time that you just don't know right off. Found out that his dad didn't really treat him all that well. Pap, much as I loved him, and he died when I was 6, but for me, he was a great guy. And for Daddy, he was still, Pap loved his children, but he just didn't know how to do it right. And so Daddy made a decision that he was never going to have his children experience what he had. Problem with that, this part of the baggage he brought into his relationship was putting the children before his wife. That right there, for his part, was the single biggest problem in their marriage. Mama's problems were different. And she had this whole romantic notion about how a guy ought to be, because you ought to have met her dad. Colonel in the Air Force, pilot, had stories to tell. I'm a humble guy, very religious man. And her world experiences, she lived all over the world. She's an Air Force brat. And so she comes here to Louisiana, meets Daddy, 9.5 years her senior. And he's not quite the man that Pap was. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not disparaging my father at all. Daddy was a pretty great guy. He accomplished quite a bit in spite of circumstances in his life. But they both brought baggage into their relationship that they never got rid of. So when we enter into a relationship with another party, so here we're generalizing because understand the principles here apply everywhere, most specifically to a marriage relationship, but otherwise to any other two. So trust is something that we give someone before they deserve it. Yes? You have to. How can you get anything done in the world if you don't do that? But again, getting back to that sales job that we have of earning the trust, to keep and maintain that level of trust, to be trustworthy, that becomes part of the relationship. So if we bring baggage in, fortunately, Ron and I are both redneck enough, we could identify on many levels. But her upbringing was vastly different from my upbringing. So it's about how do we bring all this together? How can we bring the two together and make one that is a multiplication instead of just addition? Even the Bible says, the cord of two strands, I think I'll get to there shortly. A relationship ought to multiply the sum of its parts. Does that make sense? And so it requires trust. Trust is given at the outset, however maintaining it is earned. We all bring baggage through the journey of building relationships. And remember, relationships mean to relate. Take your paradigms, figure out how you can see the same thing together. Through the journey of building relationships and marriage particularly, we ought to be about recognizing that to get rid of, what to get rid of, and what to, and catch this, retain in a common bag. So in other words, there's stuff we got to quit doing. There's thinking, change your mind. Nobody else can change your mind for you, but that is the highest and most powerful thing that we're responsible to do, is get control of our own mind. Own your mind business. What does the Bible say? Take captive every thought. Hold it up to Christ. When we do that, when we have our focus on Him, who's the ultimate, the pinnacle of what a human ought to be, right? Then we have an example to follow. Man or woman, it doesn't matter. In righteousness, in how to treat other people. And so, we've got to get rid of the baggage, the habits, the things that we can identify. This doesn't work. Einstein said insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. Here's another one that he said that most people don't seem to know that he said this. A problem cannot be solved by the same mind that produced it.
That is good.
So think about that. A problem cannot be solved by the same mind that produced it. All right? We need to get educated beyond our upbringing. On your mind definition of maturity, overcoming your upbringing. Think about it. Even the Bible says, you know, we all had human fathers who disciplined us as best they could. Everybody's got their limits. Our children, fortunately, were raised better than we were because we learned a higher level of discipline from God the Father than we did from our own parents. And so we passed it on to our children. Did we do a perfect job? No means. We're human. Boy, if I knew then what I know now, right?
Right.
But that's the whole idea of learning. We have one daughter who, she came to us when she was, 13, 14 and a half, something like that?
13.
Yeah. And her background, you wouldn't want her background. You wouldn't want her family history. It's quite something. And she was one of the most wonderful little girls you could ever, she's 40 years old now, I think, something like that.
How old is she now?
You know,
She'll be 40 in March.
But she's our girl. But we had difficulties with her because of her paradigm. And her paradigm was what she carried between her ears. Now we have a very dear friend who's a global leader in business. And one of the things he likes to say is we are all just 6 inches from success. Brian Hayes. What 6 inches? Between our ears. That great expanse between our ears is where we live every day, in and out. And so, to have a common receptacle for the baggage that we keep, the things that are in our baggage, what do we have that's worth keeping? Keep it. If it's not worth keeping, get rid of it. What does the Bible say? What benefit did we reap of the things we're now ashamed of? Well, learn to be ashamed of some of the things that you do. When you see that what I'm doing here has an adverse effect on my life, especially in regards to this other party, maybe I need to change. We want everybody else to change because there's nothing wrong with us, right? Something's wrong with us. If we keep seeing the same thing happening between us and anybody else.
Exactly.
We can't get away from that. It's just, that's part of our responsibility. So we want to buy into another and sell out to everybody and everything else. Faithful commitment is buying in. Forsaking all others, selling out. See, we always want to hear this. It's misused, you know. I'm sold out to them. It's kind of right, but it's not. You sell out somebody. Look at a mafia movie, okay? You know, the rats, the cheese eaters. You know what they do? They sold somebody out. They told on them. Okay? So the things that we have, the people that we have, that don't add to our life, much less multiply good in our lives, sell them out.
Exactly.
Put them to the side. Love them, but leave them alone.
That's right.
Okay? When we're in a marriage relationship, we don't have that privilege. Okay? This is where we got to step up things, and it takes two to make this happen right. The faithful commitment, as I said before, when Ron and I, before we ever got married, we made a commitment to this before that. Now, think about the term faithful. What's the definition of faith? Faith is being sure of what you hope for, certain of what you do not see. So I've given somebody my trust, sure of what I hope for. I hope that I get a good return on investment with this one. Right?
Yeah.
certain of what I do not see. Not all that glitters is gold, right? But that doesn't mean that Merlin can't work his magic in the form of God and help somebody change. But it's not our job to change somebody.
That's right.
It's their job
That's right.
to put their hands in God's hands. Let Him mold and make us. He's the potter, right?
That's right.
I got enough things to be concerned with. So, for instance, getting back to love and respect, she has her own book so she can read and learn about herself and learn about me. I have my own book so I can learn about myself and learn about her. But it's not for me to read the book and say, boy, I hope she's getting this. How many times you sit up in the service and you say, boy, I wish this person was here to hear this? Well, are you listening? We all have to be humble enough to accept the word planted in us. That's what the Bible says. Humbly accept the word planted in us. So what are your dreams and goals? If you're married, there is a life ahead of you. The life that Ron and I have now is so much higher and bigger than the one we had when we got together. That's a part of growth.
Correct.
It's supposed to be that way. We're supposed to grow as individuals, to expand beyond our current environment so that we can live in another one. You know how big a goldfish can get?
Depends on the tank it's in.
Thank you. Exactly. It depends on its environment. Even a red-eared slider, they'll stay a little bitty like that. Keep them in a tank, in a terrarium, but those dudes can get like this big around. You let them out in the wild. If the environment of growth is large enough and they have a good nutritional supply, see, I'm very careful in my words. What is a nutritional supply for us? Not only good food,
Spiritual growth.
spiritual
Emotional
food,
growth.
emotional food, knowledge.
Right.
If you go and see what Peter says, 1st or 2nd Peter is one of them, I always forget. Add to your faith goodness, and the goodness knowledge, and the and the knowledge faithfulness, and faithfulness self-control. I'm getting it wrong. Add to your faith goodness, and the goodness knowledge, and the knowledge self-control, perseverance, godliness, to godliness, brother kindness, love. Okay? It's an upward spiral of growth. And if I got it wrong, we can go check the videotape later and you can call me on it. That's fine. But that's the way God puts it. It's a growth. See, add to your faith goodness. Think about it. And think about it in your relationships. See, we start out with faith, and faith is a gift. Now, faith is not specifically religious. Do you understand that? Every one of you are sitting in a chair. You trusted that chair would hold you when you got your butt down in it, didn't you? You looked at your chair and it says, will it look sound? Sound doctrine? Integrity? Seems solid. Integrity. Well put together. Might even be comfortable. I'm going to trust the chair and I'm going to sit in it. The chair didn't put me on the ground. The chair has earned my trust. Same way with people. We must be careful to avoid over-theologizing. That's a new word to me. Over-theologizing things. Oh, the Lord, and I got to, every decision and all that. Yes, keep your decisions ahead of God. But don't be so caught up in it that you do nothing, waiting for God to tell you to do. It's the right thing to do. Do it. Do it the right way. Trust God's put something in you. Because if you have the desire to do it, it's probably the right thing to do. If it doesn't harm anybody else. So, buying in. So what are your dreams and goals? Have dreams. Deion Sanders said, and I'm not going to get it quite right, but essentially he said, if your memories are larger than your dreams, then you're dead. If your memories are larger than your dreams, you see, dreams are important because they're something beyond our current reality. And it's important for couples, or, for instance, if you work somewhere. If you are employed by someone, you are a part of that person's building their dream. Understand that. Because you might be there for your own purposes. I'm going to make me $1, you know, and for most of us the job is just exactly that, just over broke. If you want more than that, then you're going to have to put out some more. Maybe have your own business, or do both. But currently, if you're employed at somebody else's business, you're living and working in and for their dreams. They're compensating you for it. Does that make sense? It's kind of important to get that relationship right, you know, and see what you can get out of it. If you're married to someone and you don't buy in to their greater vision for your life together, you rob yourself. You go to a job and you don't put out like the boss wants you to because now you're putting a hindrance on his dreams, well, they do to you. You're out of here. I'm going to find somebody else to work with me. I have a lawn care business. I am gainfully unemployed. Thank you very much. And I work alone. Because too many people have come into my business that I was their solution instead of them being a solution for me. So that I could grow my business and them benefit from that growth. In a marriage, you don't just go and just, well, you're out of here, lady. You're out of here, guy. When you made the commitment to be married to a person, you made a commitment to be of one flesh. And if you are the lame leg because you won't buy in and step with your partner, then the dreams, if they are to come true, it's going to take a lot more effort on their part, and it's going to take a lot more time. It's just the way it is. But think of how much better life can be when we buy in to our other's dreams. Now, I mentioned the goals. Do you know what the difference between a dream and a goal is? A dream is something kind of like a wish. Wish I had that. Welcome, ladies. Nice to see you. Thank you. You too, young man. I wasn't calling you a lady, I promise. See the masculinity there. So anyway, a dream is something we want. It's a vision. It's something, and be emotionally attached to it. Fire that emotion up. That's what's great about the difference between men and women. Perhaps I can silence that. It's men and women is, if a woman learns how to help the man with an emotional thing, the guy will figure out how to make it happen. He's going to feed on that. And she'll feed on his confidence in being able to do something, and they can work together. Another person, and the people I mentioned, and we know through business, not my lawn care business, but another one. Pam says, if your husband wants to pitch manure, go find a shovel. It may be dirty what you're going to do, but if you're doing it together, what'd you get married for? Why do you have a relationship with someone else if not to relate and live together with? Buy into that person. Trust that if you buy in and you build them up as they're supposed to build you up too. If everybody's building each other up, nobody's doing without, right? Buying in is exchanging something of value for something of value. Trusting there will be a return on investment. Accounting. Who here does any kind of investing? You do any investing?
Just been,
Do you understand investing enough that if you put money in something, say a stock, then what you want is to be able to buy it low and sell it high, okay? If you have a 401k, that's a part of the stock market, and that's where somebody else is doing all the buying and selling. They're trying to get a return on investment. So you want to be able to put in and get multiples back. What does the Bible say? We reap what we sow, and we reap it in abundance. What kind of seed you sowing in your life? Is it good seed or is it bad seed? Because you're going to get it one way or the other. If you don't like what you're getting, take a step back and say, what am I planting? Because your life is a sum result of your thinking and your doing. On your mind business, get that right. So Ecclesiastes chapter 4, 9 through 11 says, 2 are better than 1, because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help him up. Also, if 2 lie together, they will keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? Though one may be overpowered, 2 can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. There's that multiplier. I don't know the numbers, but I do know that they can tell you, if you have 2 strands in a rope, you've got more strength there than each of them separately. Okay? Somehow it multiplies. How does that happen? I don't know. God knows. He's designed the universe to operate a certain way. Behooves us to figure that out and try to operate with it, right? So selling out is forsaking someone or something for someone or something of value. Self-sufficiency. And if you notice, everything that we're talking about here is a building up process. All right? So we've gone from paradigm shift, we need to get that thinking together, but trust and baggage, buying in, selling out, now self-sufficiency. So as you grow together, it is imperative to learn to be a producer. And I wondered if I should put the word imperative in there. It's important. It's definitely important. But as I consider it more deeply, it is imperative. It is imperative. Because if we're not both producing when we can, or if there's for some reason you can't, that's understandable, you just deal with it. You do all you can. Let God take care of the rest. But self-sufficiency, as you grow together, it is imperative to learn to be a producer. Again, in Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 12 says, wisdom is a shelter, as money is a shelter, but the advantage of knowledge is this: wisdom preserves those who have it. Gets back to the name of your group. That word wisdom is in there, isn't it, for growth? Here's something I can tell you, okay? If you have someone, I'll give you an example and you can go read about him. Robert Kiyosaki. Anybody else know who Robert Kiyosaki is? You ever heard the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad? Ever heard of Donald Trump? They did co-author a book together. But Robert Kiyosaki, how many in the 80s ever had one of those Velcro wallets?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Then you owned something. I think Robert invented that. Here's a guy who became a millionaire, largely with doing stuff like the wallets, to being homeless and he and his wife living in a car. To now he's one of the most sought after speakers on success and business and investing and things like that. Look him up, Robert Kiyosaki, Kyoski, I think it's Kiyosaki.
he's not the silver guy you see on the
Yeah,
TV
that's what I was
that
thinking
invested
too.
in silver.
You might see him on commercials.
Yeah.
Yeah, invested in coins and
Yeah,
silver. I've seen
that's
commercials.
how
He's Japanese American.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
that was Rocky.
Yeah. Kiyosaki.
I figured he was
Not Kawasaki.
So anyway,
I figured he was off.
But his book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, is an excellent book because it's about his two dads. His father was a PhD in education in the state of Hawaii. Died a poor man. He had poor man's thinking. His rich dad was his best friend's dad, who most of the hotels that you see in Hawaii, that man owned that property, at least at some point in his life. And he told Robert, said, go to work not for what you can earn, but what you can learn. And you learn about Robert's process. But the point of all that is to get back to what it says in Ecclesiastes about wisdom being a shelter. I know what I've done to have the income and the lifestyle that I have. If it all disappeared, if something happened, it all went away, but I had the ability, I could get it back. You know why? It's all up here in that 6-inch space. I know how to do it. Each of you knows how to do something. If you have a job doing a particular thing and you're good at it, but then you lost the job for who knows what reason, more than likely you could go and find that same job somewhere else. Why? You know how to do it. You have the confidence to do it. So here's a little bit about wisdom. Wisdom is the capacity to understand knowledge. That's one definition that I use. Wisdom is the capacity to understand knowledge. Isaiah 1:18 is my favorite verse in the Bible. And the last part of it says, come let us reason together. The first part of it. Come let us reason together. And for me, that helped me because even as a guy, even as logical as I think, I'm a really emotional person. I really am. And I had to learn to get a hold of myself so that in any situation, I'm okay. And anybody can do that. I got something I wrote about being unflappable. That's what it's about. And that can be another talk for another time. But anybody can learn this. You see, our emotions make great foot soldiers, but they make lousy generals. And when we can think ourselves through a crisis. Have you ever heard of anybody emotionalizing themselves through a crisis? Look at them. I don't like it because of what happened to Shelley Winters in it, but it's one of my favorite scenes that I think about. Sometimes we all need this, is in the Poseidon Adventure. She's freaking out, and the guy that wham slaps her. Got her attention, but she was good after that. And sometimes we need a verbal slap. But just think if we can do like Ricochet and do that for ourselves. Catch ourselves. Own our mind business. Get a hold of ourselves. Then nobody else has to come and coddle us and do all that stuff. We want to be held, we want to be loved, we want to be comforted. That's a lousy way to live. It's weak. It's a weak way to live. So in a relationship, just like the boss man at your job doesn't want to have to keep telling you this is how you do this. This is what you need to do. Or I'm scared and I had to pat you on the back. It'll be okay. It'll be all right. Just it'll be okay. That's not being an asset. That's being a liability. So in a relationship, we want to make sure that we're assets to the other person. Ecclesiastes 11:6 says, sow your seed in the morning, and at evening let your hands not be idle. For you do not know which will succeed, whether this or that, or whether both will do equally well. We have two businesses. One's kind of a daytime one, the other's kind of an evening time one, if you separate it that way. Anybody can do something like that. When you look at the Bible, if we really looked at the Bible as how long the workday was, it was from daylight to dark, and then beyond. Whatever your hand finds to do, be productive. Sow your seed in the morning and in the evening. We never know when hard times come. Be prepared, mentally, physically. When we look at Proverbs 31, Now, when I say that, who in here doesn't automatically go and think about the Proverbs 31 woman?
That's right.
The virtuous woman, yeah.
Let me ask you this. You ever considered her husband? He's in there.
Wow.
That'll be your homework. Because sometimes to learn the most, we have to see what isn't there. Now, filling in the blanks can be dangerous. But when we look all through the rest of the Bible, now, the Bible is written primarily to men folks. That's not a sexist statement at all. Because Adam came first, he's point man. The one ultimately responsible for what happened in the garden is Adam. Because he was there when it was taking place. All he had to do was man up, step up, and say, Eve, you remember what God said? Don't eat that. He didn't do it. And then everybody else is blaming everybody else, including God, got to blame. Isn't that human of us? But the man is off conducting business. That's why you don't hear too much about him. When you look at all the other places where it says be diligent with your hands, there's not saying, men, be diligent. And nothing for women. It says, diligent hands rule. Lazy hands end in slave labor. There's no sex applied to that. It's to human beings who will read the statement, take it at its word and apply it with wisdom. So that gets us to the other part of what is wisdom. Wisdom is not only knowing, being able to understand knowledge. And the reason why I say it that way is because in Proverbs chapter 2, you see that upward spiral again. Okay? In James chapter 1, he says, whoever lacks wisdom should ask God who gives to all without finding fault. Right? But when he asks, he must believe and not doubt, or he's like the one blown and tossed by the winds. That man is double-minded and unstable in all he does. When you look at your life and you see instability, you see the product of a lack of wisdom, and so you have a lack of maturity. All right? So, wisdom is doing the right things. If you understand, let me get back to Proverbs chapter 2. You always see wisdom, knowledge, and understanding coming together. And it starts with wisdom. Wisdom is the ability to understand knowledge. But you have to get the knowledge to have anything to understand. And through use of wisdom, or by wisdom, the knowledge that you gain understanding. What we call that in modern vernacular is experience. Right? So, we see a man, we see a woman, and a man who produce. So being self-sufficient. When you have a couple, and both of them learn how to produce in their life, if something happens that the other one is not able to contribute what the two of them need, they're gone. For whatever reason, they're out of the picture as far as a producer goes. When we have self-sufficiency, we're able to produce. Does that make sense? I don't know if I explained it well. I was really hoping for a better response than that, but understand, but that right there, that statement and that fact, probably the reason why that was a hesitant response is because that holds the greatest weight of responsibility for each of us.
Say it again.
That fact holds the greatest weight of responsibility for each of us. To make it easier to understand, who gets paid the most at a job? The boss man or the guy cleaning the toilets?
The boss man.
Why? Does he do more than the guy cleaning toilets?
No. Because he's smart.
Well, how much responsibility does the guy cleaning toilets hold compared to the guy?
Took the most risk.
He's holding, he bears the weight of responsibility for the entire operation. So when we have that, when we grow into that position in life, however that means, whether it's as a parent, as an employee, as an owner of a business, doesn't matter. Minister, doesn't matter. When we have the greater our level of influence on another person or persons, the greater our responsibility to be able to hold what we have together to do. And so that's why when we get up to self-sufficiency, and when you read in this might help make sense to you. In this book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and I'll end with this. He has his own staircase. Be proactive. See, these are private victories. These are just for us. These are, be proactive and do something without somebody telling you. Okay, this is, we're in the level of dependence. We depend on other people, but we want to grow beyond that. Begin with the end in mind. Everything is created twice. That chair had to be created in someone's mind
Correct.
before they put their hands to the task and produce a chair, correct? So the life that we want, getting back to dreams, we must begin with the end in mind. If that's what you dream about, go back to goals. What is a goal? A goal is a dream with a time limit. That's all I really have to say about that. I didn't say it before because we got off on something else. But that's what turns a dream into reality, is that goal, making it a goal. Okay, because a dream is just something someday, one of these days. Which day? Make it a goal. Now I say that like it's easy to do, and it's not. But is it worth it? You bet your butt it is. Pardon me. Put first things first. Put first things first. I mean, so these are the first 3 steps that get us to the level of independence, self-sufficiency. Think win-win, which is what all of this has been about anyway, if we're in a relationship with someone else, because we're wanting to grow to interdependence. Seek first to be understood. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. What's the golden rule? Treat others how you want to be treated. Well, if you want to be understood, try doing that first. Seeking understanding, right? So that's golden rule. And then synergize. Synergize means you work together. You're doing something. You're taking action together. And that gets us to the highest level, interdependence. I can depend on you. You can depend on me. We lack nothing because we're both putting all in. And then sharpen the saw is the 7th habit, which is keep working on all of it. Keep working on all of it. Your growth never stops. As long as you're breathing, you got growth somewhere, because you never arrive. We never arrive. And when we think we have, get back to Dion, our memories have now become larger than our dreams, and we are dead in the water. So that's about all I have. Any questions?
Very good.
Thank you, Stacy, for coming.
Very, very
You did a very good job. Thank you, Stacy.